I am Karin Davidson, and I am here to interview Kari Tumminia. And Kari is a love and dating coach and speaker, author, and she's the author of the No Bad Dates, which I have, of course. Isn't that great? And which she is an expert at. I'm personally aware of that. Today we are going, which I'll tell you in a minute. Today we're going to talk to her about her gifts of divine guidance and the powerful energy work she uses to help people find true clarity and guidance in all areas of their lives. And she may have written No Bad Dates, but which is we would wish we could say, but she also can, it's pretty much anything because of how she gets her information. Now, Kari's been an employee of mine. She's been a student of mine. She's been a client of mine. And Dr. Stephen Adler, who's a master professor and teacher of hypnotherapy, once said to me, to be a true master teacher, I have to teach at least 3 people to be better than I am at what I do. And Kari is one of those people. So you can't get somebody better than Kari. Well, hopefully I'll make another one of her. No, I'm kidding. But she is amazing. And we're going to talk about some things that she doesn't really talk about in the book because this forum is something that's very open and easygoing. We're going to talk about things that in our area, we live fairly close to each other, especially in the Northeast, is we don't tell people that we can contact and see and feel masters, teachers, guides, angels, whatever you want to call it. And so one of the things that I worked with Kari on is to listen. And my interview yesterday with Shamie, that's one of the things she asked me, how do I know? And it's a very subtle process to be able to get to be able to hear and feel and sense and know what they're saying. And Kari was one of those people that not only was eventually able to do it, but is amazing at it. And so, Kari, I'm so glad that you agreed to come on here and talk about this weirdness that we do.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be interviewed. I'm thrilled to be here. And it is weird, isn't it? But so good at the same time.
And the thing is we don't really, and a lot of my clients say this too, there's nobody really to talk to. There's nobody around you. Your family and friends go, yes, whatever she does. And, because they don't know. Yeah. And there's nobody that you can turn to. It's better now, but not a whole lot. But especially in our area, it's a big secret, because only a few decades ago, people were locked up for seeing dead people. And I was so happy when that Sixth Sense came out and this little kid says it. I was like, yes, somebody said it.
Somebody said it out loud.
So you have all these gifts. You learned EFT, matrix, dimensional healing, divine light healing, everything I know you've learned. And, I make you make the joke that of being told that you will use every single thing that Karin has ever taught you and more. And I want people to realize just how much you worked at becoming who you are. And because people don't understand, they think, oh, I want to just do that. So I want to talk a little bit about, how you found out, how you walked into hearing guys, because I don't hear, I only sense. You actually hear words. Yeah. And you're right. And it didn't start like that. I remember the first one, and then I shut up and you get to talk. I probably should have done that before. That you first started sensing, like you knew what people were lying.
Yeah, I remember it was one of my very, very early clients. It was right when I was just training in like EFT and Matrix, and it was a practice client. It was actually kind of a friend of mine, a woman that I knew. And I remember coming to you saying like, she lied to me. And I was shocked. Like, I just never expected her to lie to me in a session. Like, I'd asked her about something and she gave me an answer. And ordinarily in the rest of my life, I would have just believed her. And I knew as soon as she said it, the words came out of her mouth and I knew that she was lying. Like, I knew it wasn't true. And I didn't know what to do with that at the time. It's the very first time I just knew. And I had no clue. I was like, do I tell her that I know? Does she know that I know? And I said nothing. And I remember the next time I saw you, I was like, Karin, I had this person, she talked to me, she lied, and I knew that she lied, and I don't know how that I knew, but I just knew that I knew that I knew. And you were like, okay, like this is normal, this happens. And that was the first kind of like conscious, like, I know something that somebody's not telling me. Like I've no reason for knowing it, and I know it.
And I have to tell you though, that when people know that, they get scared of you. It's really funny because once they feel it, I can feel it in the room, because I was teaching a level 3 class, and a woman was sitting in the room. She happened to be a court photographer, stenographer.
Yeah.
And, she's like, I knew when somebody was lying. I always know when somebody's lying. And I could feel the room just go, I was like, well, that's a very weird feeling. Why would you be up? And then I realized, that dolphins always know everybody else's feelings. They're connected to feelings
Oh,
of each other. And
yes.
so it's like, what would a world be like if everybody knew what you thought? Everybody gets terrified.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you did a really good job not telling people that.
I didn't. And then even now to this day, even though it's become a very normal thing for me, it's not something I talk about a lot, but it's normal. And a lot of my clients know that I do this, but when they first start with me and they first kind of start to recognize that I know things that I don't have any reason for knowing, they always fall into that. Either they'll be like, well, now I'm not telling you anything because you know everything. Or they'll say, well, what am I thinking right now? Can you tell me? I'm like, that's not how it works.
Yeah, I
But
want to talk
people
about
get
that.
weird.
It is not how it works. So how do you can't go around like, do you go around listening to people's thoughts? I mean, how
No.
do you?
No, and I would say I'm not even listening to people's thoughts because I'm not accessing the thoughts in people's brains as much as I'm accessing information that comes from outside of them. So it's information from their guidance or angels, whoever's with them, and it's also information from their field or their unconscious, but it's not usually what they're consciously thinking because they can tell me that. I don't need to find that out. That's the stuff that they can tell me, and that's not usually the stuff that like helps. It's not usually the stuff that changes anything is what they're consciously thinking, because if it did, they wouldn't be seeing me, as you say all the time. So it's sort of the information that's outside of their conscious thought. So every time someone's like, well, tell me what I'm thinking right now, it doesn't, I'm not accessing that information. It's beyond that.
Sure.
And the mechanism of how it works, it still don't even know quite how it works. It just comes to me in sort of little floods of information. I hear auditory input. I also have sort of innate sort of knowings, stuff that comes from, I don't necessarily hear it, but it just kind of appears in my mind and I just know that it's true because of a body like gut feeling. Between the combination of those two things, it's a lot of information usually, but it's never what they're thinking.
Always. That brings me to something. First, I want to say to anybody that's watching, if you're on Facebook, you can, if your name is in there, you can ask one question, and we're not going to be able to get to everybody, but if you can write that question into the comments, hopefully we can get we will get to some of them. We obviously won't be able to get to everybody, but luckily I use divine guidance to find, which will be helpful to the most to the group. So don't feel offended if we don't get to yours. We just don't have enough time. So just what is your question about yourself that you would like answered, and I need your name, which is, if your name is different than what Facebook has, at least give us your first name and your and a last initial. I want to talk a little bit about what you said about sensing and hearing, because I remember, because this was a long time ago, you're going like, but Karin, it sounds like me.
Yes. Yeah. When all this started, or at least when the knowing came first. So my first experience with knowing, I already told that story. And then the hearing sort of came after that. So once I got comfy with the knowing, the hearing came next. And I remember the first time I heard anything, I was home by myself. And for the very first time, it sounded like someone was in my house calling my name. And I thought, I live close to my family. We don't really lock our doors around here. And we kind of like all come and go out of everyone's houses. And I thought that someone from my family had come to visit me and was calling my name through my house. And I kept getting up from my work and like going and looking, and no one was here. And I'm like, what is happening? And I started to panic a little bit. And again, I remember calling you like with all the weird things that I call you with, where I'm like, I hear my name. I don't know what's happening. And that was really jarring at first.
Were
And
you
then once I
scared?
kind of,
Were
yeah,
you
I was terrified because I thought I was going crazy, honestly. Because I have such a history, if you know my personal story, and some people do, I have such a history with depression and anxiety. And I was like, well, this is just the next mental health thing. Someone's going to put me away because I'm hearing voices now. And I was terrified. I was terrified that something was wrong with me. And then once I really relaxed into that, at first I had a hard time telling the difference between my own thoughts, like my own internal voice, and the input that I was getting. And it really just came down to practice. It came down to like feeling the energetic difference and knowing the nuance difference. And now they sound completely different now that I've done it for such a long time. But at first I was like, wait a minute, is that me? And I don't know if it's as much as they sounded exactly the same, or as I was so doubtful that this is what was happening, that I was going to be this person with this kind of a gift, that I was like, no, this can't be. It's got to be just the voice in my head, the internal dialogue. And it wasn't. Mostly the affirmation for that was mostly that I was getting information that I would have no business knowing.
Great. This brings up another questions that I don't want to go too deeply into because we don't have the time. But there's a lot of, where do I start with this question? One of the things I say is when people pray or they ask for guidance, I say, well, who are you talking to? Who are you asking from? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm just asking for guidance. Well, would you ask the guy walking down the street, how to build your house, or, what should you have for dinner tonight? You're not going to ask that. So how do you know, like, you're probably this beacon, like if you can hear these things, like I don't know if you saw the movie Ghost with the line of people with Whoopi Goldberg that once, how do you discern, how do you stop it? How do you know you should listen to? All those questions.
Yeah, that's a big question. We probably definitely don't have time to
Right.
really answer it. But the short answer is that it's a lot of personal work that I do to set boundaries so that I know that I'm only receiving input from sources that I already trust and know. So I have personal angels, guides, whatever you want to call them, that interact directly with me. And because I also have a very religious background, a very religious upbringing, I was already very comfortable with praying to the Holy Spirit and praying to God and asking for insight. And I do believe that some of my insight also comes from the Holy Spirit. Like I believe in that still. And I think that as long as I work to stay focused on, that's where I receive my insight. I'm not just connecting with whatever energy shows up or whatever energy knocks on the door, so to speak. And I'm really, really strict about those boundaries. And not only that does that keep me safe, but it also lets me really trust the insight that I get because I know where it's coming from and I don't have to second
Does it
guess.
feel different when it's wrong?
Yes.
Okay.
It feels unfamiliar. So I know that if I'm connecting with something that's not what I'm meant to connect with, it will feel unfamiliar or off. And at this point, I'm so used to the feeling and the energy behind my sources of information, or if I just connect to spirit, the Holy Spirit, that feels so commonplace to me that as soon as something is different or off, I'm like, oh, I know that this feels different. This doesn't feel right. And I will disconnect and sort of recalibrate because it's really important to me that I only am connected to the places that I need to be connected.
So you're talking about the people around you. And since I'm obviously familiar with this too, you know the people around you.
Mhm.
But when you're working with somebody, you also connected their people, right?
I do. I have set it up so that it happens sort of through my people,
Hmm.
whereas it's almost like I don't know, I imagine it like a business deal, right? Like where I come with my attorneys or my people and you come with your people and then our people talk and then I'm observing. That's more what it feels like. So I don't have to make a direct connection with whoever shows up to my office or on the internet because I don't know them,
Right. I call it the communicator.
Yeah.
I have a communicator that's really good at communicating with their communicator,
Mhm.
and they communicate with that person, and that person communicates. And it sounds like it's a pain in the neck, but
Right. But it happens like
like
instantaneously. Yeah.
instantaneously, right? So you want to play?
Yeah, I love that. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's do a couple. All right. We'll start with, so I want to talk about, you do use tools, and
Yes.
you do
I do.
like then into, because, and it's explain why, you're getting all this guidance. Why do you use a tarot card or muscle testing, or whatever you use?
It's sort of like a translation tool. to me. So the input comes through, and it's the knowing, and that's like very energetic and like sort of a feeling based. And then I get the auditory input, and sometimes it comes so fast, or there's so much of it, or it isn't like people's guides are always just chatting with me in like English. So it's almost like I have to translate the meaning and the intent behind what is told to me. And I find that the tools just help me confirm that my translation is correct, and not really, they don't give me the information. It's more of a confirmation for me that I'm saying the right words and interpreting it the right way, in the most accurate way possible.
Because it's sort of like a complete mess of information,
Yeah,
right?
it's just like just drops in all at once, and I have to sort of like pick through it like a plate of pasta that you're trying to find something in. Like that's sometimes what it feels like.
Yeah, that's a
And
good.
you know, and then making sure that I'm saying the thing that people need to know the most. Because sometimes information comes through that's secondary or supporting, but it's not like the thing. And
Does
so I
that
like
ever
to make
hurt your
sure that
feelings? I
what
mean,
part.
do you get information that is overwhelming?
Oh yeah. I definitely will get information that's overwhelming, sometimes really emotional. And sometimes it goes against what I think, or what my person would think or say. And so I very often will say to my clients, like, well, I know this isn't me because I don't necessarily agree with it, or that wasn't the advice that I would give, especially when it comes to like dating and relationships, which I use these tools a lot in, where, someone will be asking about a particular guy, and I'll be like, in my head, I'm like, well, he's an asshole. Like, we don't need, you know, you shouldn't be dating him. And then, the guidance will come through that it's right, or that they should be together, or that they need to focus on this and stay together. And I'm like, well, it's not me because I wouldn't have said that. So yes, definitely sometimes I don't consciously agree with it, which is a weird experience, as a coach and as an energy worker. Sometimes it's weird to get information that I'm like, oh, this is not the advice that I would give as my person, even in all my experience.
And you're getting your PhD in counseling, right?
I am, yeah.
So
So,
that's now you have like all
yeah.
kinds of.
Yeah, so now I have a professional opinion, and it doesn't always align with the divine opinion. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to give you the divine opinion because I believe that that's most aligned for you, even though my human it might be a little bit like offended by it.
Yeah, I know about that. Okay, so the first one, her name is Jenny.
Okay.
And she wants to know, how do I stop being afraid of health concerns? I can give you more information, but that's the main question. If you need more information, let me know.
How does Jenny stop being afraid of health concerns? Well, okay. So the first thing that came through, and I will say that sometimes people's guidance or their angels or my guidance or angels have a little bit of a sense of humor or a little bit of attitude, because the first thing that came through was, you know, that she needs to be a little more selective. Like, there are things to be concerned about and there are things not to be concerned about. And just lumping all the concerns together, which is what it feels like she does. There's not even any selectivity in what she decides to be concerned about herself. That's sort of like adding to itself. So the guidance that came through was a little bit like, well, maybe she should be a little more picky about what she decides to be concerned about. Um, and honestly, the answer is that she's compensating in some way for care or mothering or caretaking that she from her perception doesn't feel like she received as a child growing up in some way. And on an unconscious level, she's trying to make up for that by like hyper caring for herself. And it's turned into this obsessive pattern of thinking that's not serving her. And honestly, she needs to not focus on what she thinks that she was missing all the way up until now, however old she is, and really make a commitment to herself to facing forward and being excited about something in the future. Like, she has to look forward to something, and that will help her take some of the energy out of like all the things that she thinks might be wrong with her. And for whatever reason, her access to like traditional medicine, even though I don't usually say anything against traditional medicine, because obviously is important and has its place, but for some reason her access to it or whatever doctor she's seeing or however she's getting care is sort of like playing into or enabling this sort of like almost like a hypochondriac situation. And it's just like adding to the snowball. And so she really should break away from or set some boundaries between herself and sort of traditional medical care or the particular doctor that she's seeing, and pursue things that are maybe not quite as traditional to balance that out a little bit. And that will help her break the cycle.
Well, she should be laughing right now or crying because I happen to know this person, and it's right on.
Good.
And so she's gonna have a lot of questions for me later. Okay. All right. Well, next one is Susan.
Okay.
What do I need to do? Do you need time in between to shift or anything?
No, I don't. It's, I mean, a couple seconds, but it's
okay. What do I need to do to move on from the doctor's misinformation?
What does Susan need to do to move on from the doctor's misinformation? Well, I mean, the first question that came to me, so sometimes, and what's actually very cool about this particular way that I get information is because it's auditory, sometimes they will fix the question for me.
Oh, cool.
Oftentimes, not just sometimes, people will ask a question that they think is really important, but it's not really the question that they should be asking, or it's not quite right. And so they will sometimes give me a new question. That for some reason I have to re-ask again. They won't just answer the new question themselves. I have to say it all over again. But the first answer that came up, or the new question that came up, was, does Susan actually have to move on from the doctor's misinformation? And the answer that I actually get is no. And so I asked explain that, because that doesn't make any sense if that's her question. She obviously feels that way. And the reality is that there's something about her understanding of moving on that is not accurate for this situation and won't actually serve her goal. So for whatever reason, in her mind, in Susan's mind, moving on means I leave this thing over here intact and I walk away from it in some way. And then I don't have to look at it or see it anymore. But in reality, like, that's not enough. And the answer that I get is like, it needs to be more like burning it to the ground, like burn it to the ground. Like, just, you can't just walk away from it. You don't need to move on from it. You just need to like burn it. You need to, I keep getting burning imagery. So I don't know if she does rituals or if she burns things or if that would move her at all, but there's something about the paperwork or the prescriptions or the diagnosis paperwork or something that needs to be burned, and she needs to like literally let it never exist. And that's really the right words for her. And for whatever reason, that wording is going to shift something for her. And then she has to really divorce herself from the idea that she has to like make it right or make up for it, or that they're going to pay for the misinformation, or they're going to like compensate, like whatever like idea that's kind of lingering in the unconscious, that someone's going to make up for it in some way, or someone's going to like, someone's going to admit that they were wrong, or that is not it. It's not that it will never happen, but she can't focus on it right now. It will happen when it's meant to happen, and it can't happen until she really literally doesn't just move on from it. She needs to burn it to the ground. That's the words they keep using. So that must be something that resonates with her on some way.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right, Scott. Am I somehow contributing to my knee pain, and what do I need to do? These are actual questions people ask me, and I have permission from them to obviously talk about it.
No, contributing is the wrong word. Scott's not contributing to his knee pain, but he is participating in not getting better by some resistance or unwillingness to really decide and commit to doing the things that part of him knows will actually work, but part of him is not convinced will actually work. So it's not that he's doing anything to make the knee pain worse. It's not doing that he's doing anything to bring the knee pain about, but he hasn't, or he won't like really like full force, like go into like doing the weird things, the alternative things maybe that.
And that's what I was going to ask. Is it the alternative things? Because when he was very sincere when he was writing it, what do I need to do? Like people like instructions is what I always say. And sometimes it's not about instructions, right? So, but like, is it alternative, or is it doctors, or is it physical therapy, or like what do I need to do? And if it's emotional, cool. It was sort of like, what do I need to do? Which is what a lot of clients that come to us, they're like, just tell me what I need to do.
Right? Yeah. The first thing that has to be done is he has to decide that he's willing to do whatever needs to be done, and understand that it's not going to look or feel or happen the way that he would prefer it to look or feel or happen. And that has to be okay. Like he has to be okay with that. And there's a little bit of belief stuff around possibility, because a big part of him doesn't believe that it's actually fixable. And it's just, this part of him has sort of resigned himself to just having this is his now the rest of his life. Like that's what that part feels like. It's definitely alternative things. I don't feel anything around traditional doctors, but I do get a nice hit around physical therapy. So I don't know if physical therapy is an option, or if there's some sort of alternative physical therapy. I'm not even sure if that's a thing, but the combination of those two. But before those two will help, the decision has to come first. The decision that I'm willing to address the part of me that doesn't believe this is possible, and I'm willing to just gung-ho do the things, even if it doesn't look or feel or go the way that I want it to look or feel or go, and I don't feel like it all the time.
You are very precise, Kari.
Thank you.
I love it. And your guides, whoever's talking to you, they are doing a great job. And I promised one thing I would tell one for one of your guides at the end of this.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Speaking about the end of this, can we say we have another 20 minutes or so or whatever, your website, and they get a free gift on the website, but you're going to do something else, right? So
Yeah.
first of all, go ahead. What's your website?
Honestly, my website is really tailored a lot toward the dating and relationship stuff. So sometimes people might see me in this capacity and they're a little bit confused when they go to my website, because they're like, I'm not here for dating. I'm here to get all my questions answered. So I just want people to know that if you go to my website, there are free gifts there. There's lots of information there, but that might not be exactly what you're looking for. So there is an alternative option for this call for people specifically if they want.
And it's called Divine Guidance, right?
Divine Guidance. And it is on my website to book a full appointment for this, because I do full appointments.
And you're going to give a free gift, and only if they do it in December, because people will watch the replay, how many years past this.
Right.
And so for the month of December, right, or you're going to extend it, that they can ask you one question, right? On if they send you an email with the subject line Living Energy Day.
Yeah.
They will receive an answer to one question. Is this true?
They can email me one question, whatever question they want, and I will do what I'm doing here just via email.
Okay, so if they send it to hello@ktumminia.com, they're also saying that they can, will they also sign up for your emails or information, things like that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, yes, it's sort of an opt-in essentially, but they'll get their question answered.
Okay, so just and by the way, when she writes it, because Kari is a writer, you wouldn't think because she's doing so well speaking, but that she's a extremely good writer. And so when she writes your answer, is just as good as what you're hearing here. And so that's hello@ktumminia is TUMMINIA.com. Make sure you put in the subject line Living Energy Day. And remember, if you were live, so that if you put something in Facebook question, she'll be able to answer. All right. Now the next person, Diane. How can I best help my situation health-wise and with my husband?
Okay. So I'm just a little unclear. I would just clarify in this case. I mean, I will ask, but if Diane were sitting in front of me, I would ask, Is she asking how can she help her, also her husband health wise, or her relationship with her husband? Like, what does and with her husband mean? But let me ask the health question first.
Well, okay. Well, it's the, yeah, okay.
Okay.
I think I know.
Okay. It doesn't feel like she means her husband's health. Is that?
No, I think that she means that her health condition is exacerbated by her husband, who she loves dearly.
Okay.
And I want to tell people, by the way, since I am intuitive, I am feeling Kari going there, and it's hard to describe. I feel her being able to feel people and being sorry for them, or empathy, or like, it's not sympathy. She's like dropping in and finding out where they are, and it's a very cool feeling from the outside. She's like, ooh, bink. And it's a very comforting feeling, a very caring feeling, like, bink, she's going to go help Diane. And she's got dink, she goes like right in there, and I can feel her like feeling every and having a lot of compassion for the person, by the way.
So I don't know, obviously, I'm not getting what Diane's specific health concern is, and that doesn't really matter. But it feels like Diane has an expectation or a belief or a hope that's very strong in her that her relationship with her husband was going to be one of the things that like helped her be better, that she was going to be taken care of, that he was going to be sympathetic, that they were really going to come together and sort of like, this isn't to say that they don't love each other. It's just sort of the mechanism of how they're approaching whatever her physical issue is not happening the way that she envisioned it. And so there's some disappointment there. And it makes her feel like she has to, fix something. She's going about it backwards. She thinks that she has to fix her house, like her home life, her relationship, and that when things are all copacetic and lovely, that then she'll feel better. In reality, she has to focus on herself and her health condition, and not roll her husband or her marriage or her relationship or her home life into it, even though they impact each other. We know, because we're human. And it almost feels like I don't know, again, I don't, without knowing more information, but like there's somewhere that she needs to, there's a treatment or an option that she needs to pursue for this specific health condition that she has to travel to.
Just to travel to?
Not like not another country, not like, but she has to go there and spend time.
Is it alternative or allopathic?
Both. It's both. Because they blend it. Because it's blended. Whoever this person is.
Oh, it's a person?
I mean, whoever's in charge.
Okay.
Whoever's in charge at wherever the thing is. Blends them both. It's definitely a man. She does not know about it yet. So it's not something she knows. But it's sort of the best option. And then as she focuses on herself and takes care of herself and invests in herself and is willing to explore this other option, her relationship and her home life will improve. But she can't do it the other way around. She can't make it better with her husband and like try to make her life better and her relationship better and things all line up first, and then think that that's going to make her feel better. Does that make sense?
It does. Absolutely. You're really good. Okay. So, like, I don't know that. Okay. So, I have a question from Lucy.
Okay.
The bottom, it's not really, it's, well, I'll just read it. Yeah, the hearing a loud voice calling happened to me too. I got the voice, you are stronger than we think you are. It was so loud. It was very surprising. I call it my burning bush moment. I'd love to hear the voice again. Do you have any tips? I've been able to channel in the past, but it is more a sense of knowing than a voice. Also, I have the belief I have to get into a very deep state and that it's not easy to do. Not always easy on my own. What is the best way to get myself into the zone to channel? And is it my destiny to help people this way?
Okay.
Lucy.
Okay. So there's actually a bunch of questions in there,
Right.
which is fine. Um, First of all, I love that analogy. I love the burning bush moment analogy because, again, growing up in church so much, I'm like, oh yes, the burning bush moment. That's such a good descriptor for like that sudden like hearing the voice moment. First of all, I would say, Lucy, just know that if it's happened once, it can happen again, right? So the first time is the hardest time. The first time is the time that you're not doing anything to help it. You're not doing anything to support it. It just sort of happens. And once it's happened, it's sort of that pathway of possibility is already open for you. And also you should know that you will hinder your own intuitive input if you get really focused on how it happens, if you get really focused on the method. So channeling versus knowing versus hearing versus seeing versus, I know people and I've worked with people and I've had clients certainly in the past who get very stuck on like, well, I really want to hear, I really want to hear, I really want to see, I really want to, and that hang up is preventing you from really dropping into the space that you can receive. And all this intuitive stuff is really just about receiving. It's about receiving and being open to receiving and trusting that your guides or angels, the universe, God, the Holy Spirit, know how is best for you to receive the information that you're receiving. So there's a reason that I hear some things and I feel some things and I know some things. There's a reason, and it's usually tailored to the type of information that I'm getting. And so I would say the first step is to drop that sort of what's actually limiting you, which is I really want to hear a voice, and I've channeled before and it comes like a knowing, but I want to hear the voice again. Yeah, the voice is great and it's super exciting. It can also be super annoying, by the way, just hearing voices all the time. So just let it come the way that the universe, that God intends for it to come, because it's usually tailored to the information. The second thing is that belief that it's hard, that it has to be hard, that you have to do a bunch of stuff to like help it come through. You can. Obviously, there's things that we can all do to sort of, meditate, channel, kind of like drop into our own space, and we kind of set ourselves up for input. But it doesn't have to be hard. And that belief, just like that belief in any energetic based situation is going to get in your way, is going to get in your way. And I would say that there's absolutely future threads where you help people using that gift, although it's not in the way that you're thinking right now. For some reason, that helping, the actual mechanism, is a little bit different than whatever you're envisioning. But you will use that gift, but you have to drop those two beliefs first, or else it's going to be really a lot harder than it needs to be, and harder in like nails on a chalkboard hard. Like it's going to be hard. But
Great.
letting go of those beliefs and knowing that you already gifted. We're all gifted in that way. We already have that access and you've already opened the pathway. Now you just have to relax and let it come.
I think, Kari, that's the hardest thing is that, in the 60s, they called it ESP, right? Extrasensory perception.
Yeah.
And, and in the movie, The Sixth Sense. And I truly believe it's a sense that anybody can do this. It's just so quiet. And it's so difficult to tune in. And you yourself had issues about,
Yeah. Well, I mean, Lucy's question is really interesting because I relate really deeply to this belief that it had to happen a certain way, or it had to be, I wanted to kind of control the process and I wanted it to be right. And that was one of my big overcoming moments in my own personal life, was overcoming that, like, it would only happen a certain way so that I would know that it was right. And then I kind of learned that knowing that it's right, and if I were able to control the input and how it happened and when it happened and what it looked like and what it felt like, that I would never have to trust. And trusting is the most important part.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's not is something that extremely hard to convey because it goes against everything that humans want to do, right? Because they want to like give me the instructions, I'll do the instructions.
Yeah,
And they're
I
like
want the directions.
what directions are how to make the recipe.
I have
And
definitely had clients who are like, I want to learn these things. I want to do this thing. And I'm like, well, it's not like making soup. It's not like you can read the steps on the back and do the things and then you're going to have soup. It's like a practice. It's a commitment. It's definitely something to learn and grow into. It took me years to get to
well,
this point.
yeah, I want to talk about that just a little bit because if one of your guides will not let me not. So you
Especially.
and when we first got together, you had a beautiful set of people. We called them the monks,
I did. They
and
were
because they
beautiful.
were just so adorably sweet, and they were very gentle with you, very patient, which many guides are. And
And I needed at the moment, very much needed at that time.
oh yeah, it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened if you had my guides. It wouldn't have happened. They were so nice. Oh my God. And then you ended up asking for, tell me the story. You wanted asking for like I was there too. So, but you are asking for like a single person or like somebody who you would hear, how did that happen?
Yeah. So I've up leveled through guides a couple of times, which is common. And I find happens with people as we grow and evolve. We will sometimes switch or some of our guides will swap out to be more aligned with what we need. And when I first started this journey, I was just barely a person. I mean, I was so young and I was just so afraid of everything. And I needed a lot of like hand holding, not from my mentors, from my healers, from the people that I worked with, and from my guides. And so I had this group of monks essentially that were very sweet and they were very, very loving. And I needed that level of support then. But what I found with them is as I started to expand into this gift, and I started to expand into receiving input, I found that the information that they gave was a little soft. It was not inaccurate, but it was just framed through this like niceness that made it hard to really, really get down to like the impact of what they were saying. And then, they were always very concerned about how I was doing and how I was feeling. And so sometimes the message would get lost in there. And so I wanted guidance that was much more direct. And I got it. So I did some asking and a lot of meditating on my part and a lot of work on my part to up level to a guide that would be more direct. And I wanted more direct input. I wanted more specific input, not because it was more accurate, but because it helped me convey it in a way that helps people understand better. And I up leveled to a specific guide that I use a lot now as my main communicator, who is very direct, very direct. His name is Ashram. He speaks directly to me, and he is, I mentioned in one of the very first questions that sometimes they have a sense of humor or a little bit of an attitude. That's all him. He has a sense of humor and a little bit of an attitude, but I love
And I
that.
want to make it clear that you don't have to have a guide, you know,
No,
but it's helpful that there's somebody when you do what we do, helping
yeah,
people.
because I'm working and impacting and kind of like touching so many people's energy field again, like just like I explained in the beginning, it's easier if I show up with my people and you show up with your people and they talk to each other, and that helps me keep my personal boundaries really intact energetically, and it's just a lot easier for me, I found over the years, to have one specific guide that I know is acting as my person in that boardroom, or my communicator when it comes to receiving information from other places.
And does he speak to you like in your language, or how does he, is there filters? What does he pull on your own memory? I mean, how does he talk?
Yeah, he definitely is the closest that I felt to that, the closest guide that I've had that feels like he's speaking the same language as I do. It still feels a little bit like a translation process when I say it to another person, but he uses my language a lot. Um, Sometimes I have to edit my own language out of answers because my own language is not always like appropriate for everyone, but he uses my language, and he's very big on metaphors, which I love, and illustrations. So a lot of times if I'm having trouble sort of conveying a piece of information to another person, he's really quick with it, an example or a metaphor or an image, some kind of imagery that helps people understand, which I just deeply appreciate about the input that I get, that it will often come as an answer and then sort of an illustration to help people really connect with what they mean.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Asha. One more, and then we're running out of time here. We have Cliff. His question is kind of bizarre. He's like, what do I do to occupy my time? Do I need a job, or am I going to get a job, or am I going into a monastery? What is the best? And I think what's odd is it's like occupy my time. So I don't see purpose in here or anything like that. It's like occupy my time.
Okay, so the short answer to that question is there's sort of this sense of an endless quest to occupy time with Cliff that isn't really real. He doesn't have to occupy his time the way he thinks he has to occupy his time, because he's thinking that if he occupies his time, that then nothing bad will happen. If he's not bored, or if he's not sitting alone, or if he's not doing something, as long as he's doing something and he's busy and he has something to focus on, then he thinks that that's a way to prevent bad things from happening, or bad emotions from coming up, or bad memories or bad feelings, or and it doesn't work that way. So that's not really the answer for him. But I did ask a secondary question, and they offered a secondary question, which was, instead of asking, what do I need to do to occupy my time? Because his goal for time occupation is not going to happen the way he wants it to. And he doesn't actually have to occupy his time. It feels like he's fine. Like it feels like he already has things to do, and he already has stuff that has to be done, and there's no issue there. But they did offer the secondary question of, is there something else that he could be doing with his time that would help him in some way? And the answer I get is that there's some sort of like he should focus on maybe adding some charitable work, or some kind of like helping people, like literally like making food for homeless people, or like giving it to them, or like literal like
hands-on. Hands-on.
Yeah, literal, like, not donating money. It can't be like intangible. It has to be like, I'm going to go to this place and I'm going to do this thing that serves these people who are in need. And that will actually help him in ways he's not expecting it to help him, but it has nothing to do with his time being occupied. It's different. That makes sense.
Okay. Lucy replied, by the way. That was great. Thank you, Kari and Cliff. When you said trust, it made me well up with tears. So thank you so much, Kari. And little kisses and hugs. All right. So you can, again, if you want your own question answered, you can go to hello@ktumminia.com. Kari's site is karitumminia.com. Yeah.
Yes.
And if it's the date thing you want to do, read her book, No Bad Dates. She's very well versed on that, because I think she's had a few, and now knows expert on how not to do it. And not really bad. I'm kidding. So Kari, truly, I know that this is one of the first interviews that you've done on what you actually can do. And I think I'm so glad you're getting this out to the world, because the talent you have, and the connection you have, and the love that you have to help people is enormous. And I think that really needs to be present.
Thank you. It does feel like a very sort of a coming out moment, where it's been such a secret sometimes. And again, just because of the things that we talked about at the beginning of the call, but I joked with Karin at the beginning when we originally were talking about me doing this. And I said, I've been pretending I didn't do this for 8 years. How can I just do a whole interview on it? But I'm excited, and I'm glad, and it feels right. And I do want to help people in the way that they need to be helped. So it's a gift that I'm grateful for. And I know that part of my gratitude needs to be sharing it with people.
Hey, terrific. Thank you.